Well, if you're like most Americans, when you heard the news that we had topped $33 trillion in national debt, you greeted it with a yawn. I think these numbers, what is $1 trillion? I think these numbers lose meaning at some point. They're so astronomically high. When I think of this national debt, you realize we were borrowing money against the future so we could have enjoyment now. And sometimes it was dealing with the national crisis, might have been a world war, could have been COVID or the housing crisis where there was a spending stimulus. But the cumulative effect is we've mortgaged the future of our children, haven't we?
I think so. And I think they feel that. I have young adult children and they're struggling to buy a house. They're struggling to, what they would say to me is, in your time, you could get the necessities, but not the luxuries. In our time, we can get the luxuries reasonably priced, but we can't get the necessities.
Right, and opportunity's not there. I think the shrinking of the middle class, and now with interest payments on the national debt approaching $1 trillion a year. Think about that. That's right. This last year was $800 billion. That's a staggering amount of money to pay for past sins. You're just managing the debt for past sins. It's like credit card debt. And of course, in America, we have almost $2 trillion of credit card debt. So when you look at these staggering numbers, and then the problem underlying it being so great, how do we bring in an ethic that says we've got to change our expectations, be less materialistic, and also start belt tightening? I mean, most politicians, if they run for office and talk about cutting programs and trying to ratchet down benefits, they get carried out on a funeral pyre within an hour. I mean, how do we change the ethic to where responsible government has a way of connecting with standard voters?
I think we can't give up. And I think we have to keep talking about responsible governance. The idea of these trillions in this, we owe somebody. Supposedly we owe ourselves, but somebody's holding that on us.
Right.
Another country. So it really is a sign of, it's a lack of vitality, a lack of strength, a lack of life force in our country when we're that high in debt. And the principles you and I grew up with would not tolerate that level of debt.
Right, and I think we wouldn't live beyond our means. There wasn't showy displays of wealth like you see now, but I'm just wondering for the young people, they feel like whether there's going to lead to some kind of anger toward the older generations. You borrowed all this money so you could live so well, and now look at us, we've got all this debt to pay that we can't even get basic services for our kids. It's possible you get some intergenerational conflict, isn't it?
There always is intergenerational conflict. I've been saying to my children, well, where is this idea that we had such a rosy youth? Like we had a nuclear war threat, and that was in our psyche. We had our young boys walking down the street going to the Vietnam War, and it broke our hearts. Broke our hearts. We had an oil crisis. We had hostages being taken. There's always trouble in every times.
So you've been spending a lot of your life helping people cope and deal with the mental health what-if questions, the fear-based questions. What would you tell young people that are looking to the future that feel like I was born at the wrong time? I should have been born when they were spending like drunk sailors, and no offense to sailors. But we were spending kind of recklessly. I mean, you look at the COVID, $6 trillion that was spent then, and they're finding now hundreds of billions of dollars wasted on unemployment claims and so forth. What do you tell young people about coping in the midst of these fears for the future?
It's a good question. I would say that every generation has its burdens from the last generation, and that the last generation was always going to be a mixed bag. And your generation, too, will also be a mixed bag. But here's what I see coming in this next generation. Given the technology and the internet, they think globally. They really do. They think globally. We didn't.
Right.
We were formed to think nationally.
If you went to Europe, you were a globalist.
Oh my word! Who went to Europe? Who got to do that? But so they'll have to bear the burden of our mistakes, and I suppose as elderly, aging population, we will have to also bear the burden of their feelings about our mistakes.
Right, and I do think that there's an awareness, even with this, with the people in South Korea in touch with American life through the internet. There's I think an awareness to the emptiness if your world vision is too materialistic, and then you become kind of insensitive to our need for each other. It could lead to a revival of marriage and family life because while you need money to raise a family and all, the beauty that's derived, look at all the families of next to no income that raise children and the richness of their lives. I'm hoping that that's part of their discovery, that that's still within reach to have a meaningful marriage and family life.
Jim, you're so right. I see the young couples and they're working together to figure out how to achieve a goal, and they don't realize it, but that's intimacy. That's dynamic relationship. So there will be benefits. We'll just have to identify them for them.